Yes.
Hi, Francis. Hey. Yesterday is my first time here, so this is my second. But I've been listening to your tapes for many years. So my question is about, I guess, like, because I understand what you're saying often experientially about, I think consciousness is not personal and it's universal. And so I get that, like in flashes, and then sometimes in a sustained bit, at least the way I'm thinking of it, like the possibility that your consciousness is the same as my consciousness. And I can sort of try that on. Sometimes it's, okay, I get it in a flash and it's strong. Sometimes I can try it on for a little while and it makes a big difference. And then, the habit of just thinking of me as a separate person comes back very, strong. But it seems like more and more I've been able to sort of try this on more and more. But so my question is about becoming more established in this new understanding, which is, and I have like theories about what I'm doing wrong or what I need to do, and I don't know, like, one is, or what I just don't understand. One is maybe I need to, in which I have been doing some, focus more on like love rather than truth. Me for my own personally, because I can be very in my head a lot. But also wondering if like the motivation of wanting this to be good for me as a person, is getting in the way of, establishing myself as not a person. Also, I guess sometimes I just maybe have the trouble with the feeling of the conscious. I have this idea that consciousness needs to be localized somehow, which I know it doesn't, but sometimes it feels like, okay, if I'm looking at myself, where is this thing that's looking at myself?
But it's you. It's you. And therefore that which you are looking at is other than yourself, or is not all of yourself. But your question is a little confused, or let's say there are many questions in your question.
Yeah.
And I don't know where to start. Let's start by something you said, that there is apparently sometimes a conflict in your decision between what is good for me and what is universally good, right?
Yeah.
And it takes time for us to acquire the conviction that that which is really good for me and that which is really good for all is the same. You see?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes as long as it is not clear for us that that which is really good for us and that which is really good for all is the same, we are on the wrong track. In a relationship, what we want is harmony in the relationship. And therefore, what is really good for me is whatever I do which is which is fostering a harmonious relationship. Are you following me?
Yeah.
Which is not the same as I would do if I would be living alone. If I would be living alone, I would just drink beer, eat pizza, and watch NFL. Okay? But, just random example, right? But it is not, if I am in a relationship, it is not necessarily that which is harmonious for the relationship, you know. So I have to decide what is ultimately good for me is going to be that which is harmonious for the relationship. It doesn't mean either that if I am in a relationship, I will spend all my free time shopping for Gucci bags. That's not good either. So, what, Ainsley? My reward is your smile. Yeah, where was I?
So, but there's also, you're implying though that you're not just thinking of yourself as a separate person and that only as a separate person. Like this, we have to compromise between what I want and what you want.
What I mean is at the moment I have experientially verified that which is really good for me is that which is really good for all. There is no more conflict in my decisions. You see, my decisions are straight. There is conflict only if I believe that that which is good for me is not the same as that which is good for all.
And you,
if you think about it, it's true also on the level of nations. That which is good for a nation is really that which is good for all nations. Now, so a good ruler has to determine really what is good for all. But that which is good for all is not necessarily subsidizing terrorism, you know, in Palestine, for instance. That's not necessarily that which is good for all, you see? So there is a trade-off in understanding that which is good for all, and then one that is understood, that's going to be that which is good for the nation. It's the same on an individual level. What is the action or the decision that goes in the direction of global harmony? That's the Tao, that's the path.
yeah, there's a part of me that just like hates that answer. You know, I mean, I agree with you, but I just.
We just have to verify the truth of what I've said experientially by giving it a chance. And then once we have verified it many times, then we acquire this conviction, so there is no more conflict, there is no more hard choice between what is good for me and what is good for all, because they are one and the same.
But that's not just a matter of, is it a matter of thinking about what's good for all? Or is it
Yes, it's a matter of, in a given context, in a given situation, when we have to make a decision, to do our best to evaluate what is good for all, and then make this choice. And then we will verify always that there will be a positive feedback on this body-mind as a party, as an interested party in the whole context.
Okay, that makes sense.
You see, what we talk about here may seem theoretical. Like yesterday, we spent long time, talking about, the experience of consciousness between perceptions. Is there such a thing? Is there such a thing? That seems like splitting hairs, right? And it would be so if it would remain on a purely speculative level. But it is not so if we then apply in our life the consequences of this understanding. Then it has very it leads to different decisions in our life, and a different way of living, a different way of interacting with others. And the scope of application of this understanding is almost limitless. We discover that it involves every single aspect of our life. The kind of music we listen to, the kind of people we hang out with, how we treat our children, how we treat our parents, our friends, etc.
So you might say, I could just also say that, trying on the possibility that your consciousness is the same as my consciousness is good for everyone, not just for this body-mind.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, of course. If I am you, you are me, and if we have to split a delicious cake, we are going to split it right down the middle, right? That's the impersonal decision.
Thank you.
So yesterday also you were mentioning, I am consciousness, I'm the witness. It seems to be easier to take that stance when you are viewing or when you're experiencing. But when it comes time for action, then the little I comes into play, the mind comes into play. What is the stance that I take as it seems difficult for me to be the witness and take an action, because at that point it seems like the little I is there and it is making, to some degree, just what you said is, but the little I is participating.
Well, what the kind of action we are talking about here is deliberate action, meaning action that follows a decision, right? So really, what we are talking about is what is an impersonal decision, how to make an impersonal decision, and who makes the impersonal decision. And a simple definition of an impersonal decision is a decision which isn't personal. But then we have to define what is a personal decision. And a personal decision, I'm not escaping here. A personal decision is a decision that hinges upon this belief that we are a separate reality, that we are a separate entity, right? So all we have to do in this process of decision, in this decision making, is carefully discard or disregard any decisional element that arises out of this belief.
So it has to be very deliberate, the decision-making process to
Yes.
keep that in.
And that is an experimental path in the beginning, and then it becomes experiential. For it to be experiential, it has to be experimental first. So we conduct experiments because we don't know, after all, whether consciousness is universal or not. But then whenever we have to make a decision, if we carefully try to sort out the elements of the decision-making process that originate from this belief to be a separate entity, and if we eliminate them from this decision-making process, then everything which remains is impersonal, and basically everything which remains is contextual. It's a context, right? We can be a party as a body-mind in this context among other parties. And as I said, we split the cake down the middle. In other words, we have to take into account also the vested interest of this individual element, but not place him on the throne of the king, and
So actually, related to that, or not so, we understand, or at least I understand, the universal reality, universal consciousness. Sometimes when I'm doing the self-enquiry, I am in that not knowing state. So how do I go from not knowing to I am that universal? It seems like it's a big leap.
what is important is to eliminate what you believe to be by seeing the absence of supporting evidence for it. Because what you are saying is implicitly in what you are saying, there is still the belief that I am not that universal reality, right? And therefore, implicitly in what you are saying, in spite of the fact that you say I'm in not knowing, you are not in not knowing. You see? The real not knowing is where it's not that I have there is a 5% chance that probability that for universal consciousness versus a 95% probability for personal consciousness. It's not knowing. Not knowing arises at the 50-50 level, to speak, to an engineer, right? So you have to make sure that you are on the razor's edge, but you haven't fallen on one side yet, or at least then if you have fallen on the side of universal consciousness, you're fine, right? But you don't want to be on the other side. So even 4951 won't do.
So not knowing means that I'm actually giving universal consciousness a chance.
A fair chance, which is 50-50.
Yeah. So it's really not knowing.
Yeah. If you say you have never spent any money on the horse tracks, right? Yes, and if you own a lot of money to the mob, right, and you have to pay them Monday, And you have to, the only way to make money is to put a bet on the horse. But you have never been there, you know. And you have a choice between Floozy 2 and Floozy 1, right? And you don't know anything about these two horses. How are you going to bet? You are going to toss a coin and, right? And perhaps Floozy 1 is a lemon. And but if you don't know, if you really don't know, it's 50-50. So that's the way you allocate your probabilities. Otherwise, it means you know something. So the real not knowing is real not knowing. You have to, and that's why the investigation is so important, because it is through the investigation that we reach this true not knowing, an honest not knowing. You see, not not knowing, or that Francis has said I should be not knowing, and I believe him. No, that's not knowing if you believe me. You see, not knowing is when you have for yourself ascertained that you don't know.
So then it seems like the probability of being in the not knowing state is actually very small.
Well, it depends on the sigma algebra you're considering.
When you were talking about the not knowing, I find that when I get that place energetically or emotionally, like a fear comes up, like it's not safe to be, because it's such a big space or something. How to deal with that sort of emotionality that comes up when
you must be interested in knowing for sure whether it is truly unsafe. When I was a kid, my parents would take walks at night, and we would walk past a garden, and there were two lions in statues in stone, you know, on the wall of this garden in front of this house. And I was afraid of the lion, especially in the twilight, you know. And so I would hold my dad, and I would try to walk on the other side of the of the street. So being afraid of a stone lion in the twilight is a position of ignorance. How do you get rid of the fear of the stone lion in the twilight? You have two possibilities. Either you wait until you have a full daylight and then you are certain it's stone, or you come close to it. You see? Coming close to it is an immediate decision that you can make. As you come closer to it, what happens? Your fear increases. Because you don't want to get closer to this stone lion, right? Your fear increases up to a certain point at which you realize it's stone, at which point your fear all of a sudden disappears. right? And the other path is you wait, and the sun gradually then illuminates the lions, and at some point you realize it's stone. So in the same way, there is a little bit the two ways to approach your fear. There is the way of the warrior, if you will, in which you get closer to it all the way. That's the way of the warrior. And then you have the way of the cautious way, the way of the lawyer. The warrior is the lawyer.
It seems to happen so quick, though, that sort of cutting off, to be able to catch it and then question it seems...
It's not like you want to catch it. It's to simply allow for your fear to eat you alive. In other words, allow for your fear to catch you. In order to come closer to the lion, you believe it's still a lion. It means you give the lion a better opportunity to catch you, right? You give yourself up to the lion. You walk towards the lion, you give yourself up to the lion. At some point, you realize there is no lion after all. Then you are free from the fear of lions. It is the same with this existential fear, which is a fear of separate consciousness. We approach this pretender, pretending to be us, pretending that if we get closer it's going to kill us. But at the end it is the pretender who dies when we get sufficiently close. The lion was just smoke.
That's what the unknowing seems to me in that space, is that it's the not me. Because the me is the knower. The personality thinks it's the knower. So when that, to me they seem one and the same.
Yeah, but the knower, the real knower, meaning the one which is hearing these words in this moment, is not localized, is not personal.
Right, I was speaking of the that space of unknowing seems the same in a way as the knower, which seems like a paradox.
Yes. When we are in unknowing, we are the knower.
Yes, and that's when the fear comes up, because the I disappears, and
there is a difference between the I is disappearing or is about to disappear and the I has disappeared. When the I is about to disappear, there is tremendous fear. When the I has disappeared, there is peace.
So what is it, if the I hasn't disappeared?
What I mean by the I in this case is not consciousness, it's the illusion to be a separate consciousness. That is that which really disappears. the real I never appears and never disappears. The belief to be an appearing and disappearing I, that's that which disappears.
So when you feel the peace of sitting here now, is that letting go of the personal I?
It depends on the nature of this peace, whether it is permanent or whether it is temporary. A child listens to the thunder outside in the night, is afraid, goes to his parents' bedroom and they take him in the bed, and he is reassured by the presence of the parents. Doesn't mean he's no longer afraid of the thunderstorm were he alone. You see? Whereas the adult knows, the adult is in the house and there is a thunder light protection in the house. If he protects, they don't worry.
So that's what we experience when we come here.
Possibly it's for you to say, but also it's interesting if we experience a peace which has no cause, that also gives us an incentive to acquire it. In other words, the child goes to the bedroom of the parents, and then the child is older, and then he asks a question, but Dad, why aren't you afraid of the thunderstorm and why am I and why aren't you? And the dad explains that the house is some kind of a Faraday cage and that and that inside even the remote probability that you would be struck by lightning is eliminated due to the protection of the house. And so after a few lessons in electrostatics, the child is cured of his fear of lightning.
And that cure can be a gradual, like you carry it with you, maybe more and more, until you're...
Yes. As your understanding of electrostatics improves.
Thank you.
Francis, when you had yourself that confrontation with loss of self, were you fearful?
Very.
And was that your first episode of that, or had you approached and backed off multiple times prior?
Well, the fear of death is with us up until we go through it somehow. But when we come close to the stone lion, it turns into it reaches a very strong intensity, at least in my case.
So you relaxed to it, or accepted it, or didn't fight back?
You.
Yeah. And how about Jean Klein? Did he relate the same sort of experience?
He mentioned an experience he had in Bombay on Marine Drive, but I never asked him about the fear element, if any. But it doesn't have to be that dramatic, according to some Indian account of King Janaka's revelation. It was very sweet. He was on his bed in the garden at night, and the night was full of stars and fragrances, and then he heard the Brahmin in the distance chanting the Veda, and that's how he got it.
That reminds me of Ramakrishna's also, walking across the rice paddies, and it was monsoon and the sky was dark, and he saw some white egrets flying across the dark sky, and he just fell down at the beauty of it. Or so I've read.
Okay. There are a few questions from yesterday, a few questions from last week, a few questions from today. I'm going to start with today's question. Please don't send any more questions now. We have a full plate. Question: outrage versus anger. My question is once more about the distinction between anger and outrage. I still find it hard to tell which one of them I am experiencing at a given moment. As a differentiating factor, I employ two statements I got from you. One, you called outrage a form of happy anger. Two, you said that there is no attachment in outrage, so the happy anger does not stay for too long. I will give you an example of what I mean. Due to fear and guilt-driven political decisions out of ignorance, Germany is undergoing a lot of changes for the worse. I see a form of brutalization and deformation which results in a lack of political stability, a loss of beauty and the suppression of truth. At least that's what I see. The power behind my outrage or anger is tremendous. I can feel it, and also I can feel that I enjoy this outrage/anger because I really can see how I fuel the flames, if you know what I mean. But strangely, after I have had enough, I am now able of letting the whole thing, it evaporates in almost no time, and I go on with other activities. Because of this, and the fact that I am mostly very much at peace and happy, I'm inclined to categorize my anger as non-ignorant outrage. But I want to be sure here not to fool myself. So I'm asking for your opinion. Also, if I understood you correctly, everything on the level of objective experience is in direct relation to our level of understanding of the truth. In other words, only if I, consciousness, hold on to the belief to be a separate being, to be a fragment, I issue the royal command that I want to experience events in accordance with this erroneous belief in my dream known as Maya. Is this correct? Yes. And my final question, once the understanding of my true nature is for real, would I really want to continue to experience dream events that include outrage? Why? I don't see why not. I don't see why not. But regarding the example you choose with the situation in Germany or whatever, every anger that comes from an attachment to a concept or to a belief system is real anger, it's not outrage. Outrage comes from total freedom from any attachment. So outrage is more rare than we can imagine. Real outrage. Because, for instance, if I believe that Trump is a lousy president, and if I believe that he should act in this and this and this in this way, and every time he doesn't, I am outraged. And if I am attached to my political opinions, then it's not really outrage, it's simply anger. And the same thing if you replace Trump with Obama, just to make it clear. Real outrage comes in the situation, it is not in relation to your belief system, because our belief system, our attachment to belief systems, is that which is that which kind of supports and maintains ignorance in us. The perfect attitude with regard to belief system should be the one of the physicist, or the one of that is defined by Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. You see, so in other words, only the facts at any moment, only the context, only not belief systems about religion, about what's wrong about the Bible, about the Ten Commandments, about the Quran, about whatever. None of that. In a given situation, in the real context, when it requires. Let me give you then an example of what is outrage versus the political outrage that manifests in the streets, right? Let me give you an example of real outrages. For instance, you see an adult, strong man, beating up a 3-year-old child with violence. Then, and you are in this situation, not being outraged when you hear about it. No, that you are in this situation. You are physically there. You see it in front of your eyes. What do you do in this moment? And what is the nature of that feeling of empathy for the child that comes in you? You see, in this outrage there is love, in fact. And can you be in this situation without hating the perpetrator? And keeping because the right action will come from a complete understanding of the totality of the situation. So, if your belief systems are being violated, political, religious, etc., and if you are attached to those, and as a result you feel frustrated, that's anger. In other words, that's a good definition. Anger comes out frustration, because in frustration there is a me who is frustrated. Whereas outrage, there is no me who is frustrated. There is no frustration in outrage. In this example that I mentioned of the child being maimed, there was no frustration. There is no frustration, but there is big outrage. So that's another pointer. If there is frustration, because your belief system to which you are attached are being violated, then if there is envy, that's not outrage. No matter what you are attached to, if you are attached to a view of the world that should be only ruled by the rule of law, and you want to apply that in a world where military power and violence works, you are going to be frustrated. Welcome to the club. Dory. The flowering of spiritual understanding is happiness. In plain terms, you say that the purpose of life is happiness. Does this happiness have an opposite? No. Because in order for two terms in order to have a pair of opposites, each elements of the pair has to belong to the same level of reality. To give you an example of what is not a true pair of opposites, in my night dream, I am a billionaire. In my waking state, I am not a billionaire. It could be said that these two states are a pair of opposites, right? Billionaire versus not billionaire. But that doesn't make any sense, because they don't belong to the same level of reality. Now, happiness belongs to the level of reality of the absolute, whereas misery is a relative level of reality. So they are not really opposite. Let me give you another example, which is, imagine you have a floor of infinite expanse, and you have rugs on the floor. Each rug is finite, dimensionally finite. And between the rugs, you see the floor. And if you look only locally at an area where you see, let's say you have 4 rugs on top of each other, and in the center of them you have a rectangle of floor. And you say, well, the rectangle of floor is a rug like the other rugs, but it is cold, made of stone, whereas the other rugs are made of textile and they are warm. So the cold rug in the middle is in opposition to the rugs that surround it. But that's not the reality. The reality is that the floor is a substratum of all the rugs, and that the floor is ever present wherever there is a rug, whereas there is not always a rug where there is a floor. That's a big difference. So the happiness is the underlying reality, sometimes covered by misery. Misery is the rug, happiness is the floor. They are not opposites. Second question of Dory. My girlfriend claims that she saw me sitting in a coffee shop last weekend. In her mind, it is clear that she saw me. Meanwhile, I was sitting right here in my apartment following your webcast. It's funny. So she saw you. I hope she didn't see you with a floozy. Now, I told her she was hallucinating, and that what she saw was simply not me, because I was not at a coffee shop. Her claim to have seen me is so tenacious that nothing could deter her from her claim, especially that it was supported by 2 witnesses, her friends. My claim, which is the truth, also is supported by a witness, because we were watching your webinar together. My question is this: where does the truth lie? In her claim or mine? For me, it's clear and straightforward, and for her, it's clear and straightforward. I think that the truth lies with the one who was the closest to the subject which is in contention. I guess you are the closest to the subject in contention. Tom, I just heard a YouTube video by Eckhart Tolle in which he said awakening or full awakening is a gradual process for mostly everyone, and only a few have a spontaneous and permanent awakening to their true nature. Maybe that is the best answer to all questions, as most people probably want to have complete and full awakening right away, and all questions are just an attempt to that end. Question mark. I don't see what your question is in this question. If you want me to comment, it depends on what we call awakening. If awakening is the revelation of our true nature, it's a form of experience or understanding. And it's a glimpse of something which is timeless. Therefore, awakening is timeless. From the vantage point of mind, it doesn't elapse. From the vantage point of the glimpse itself, it's eternity. If by awakening you mean the disappearance of episodes of during which we have a sense of lack, or if you will, the disappearance of episodes of misery, then this disappearing takes place apparently over time. Over time, the frequency of these episodes they become diminishes, decreases, and the duration of each of these episodes decreases over time. In other words, happiness gets incrementally, episode after episode, established. That which puts an end to each of these episodes is always a new glimpse of our true nature, a new awakening, if you will, if we use the term awakening in the former sense, in the former meaning I just explained. Still, Tom, I'm back to a lot of questions, so answer what you like. But Swami Muktananda, in one quote, said, he wishes seekers to attain complete repose of the mind in consciousness, in the realm of consciousness, which he says is stillness, and to realize that all of life is a play of consciousness. Is this the same as what you say of realizing truth? Complete repose of the mind in consciousness. What I said to realize truth is to be happy and at peace. So it depends how you interpret the complete repose of the mind in consciousness. And he asks, and is that truth the realization that one is not the body-mind, but that stillness or consciousness? Yes. you. I think I heard you once say something like, first there is peace, then there is dancing. Does that sound like something you'd say? Yes. If it is, then what is the process for a truth lover that takes us from finding and resting in deep peace to dancing in the world? It takes place naturally. You are on the dance floor, the music starts, and at some point you can't help it. The body starts moving. Tom, I notice in virtually every Advaita satsang, Kundalini is never mentioned. Why is that? Because we don't need it. That's the answer. Also, I don't mind a challenge every now and then, but is it of our choosing, or does it become up to us to ever be completely in control of just not our reactions, but to our being able to solve or handle all challenges to our satisfaction, i.e., not enough income and ways to solve it? Is it of our choosing, or does it become up to us to either be completely in control of just not our reactions, but to our being able to solve or handle all challenges to our satisfaction, i.e., not enough income and ways to solve it? Well, regarding the various challenges that life presents us with, like making enough income, or our health, or our relationships, or whatever, we have to do our best to try to solve those challenges. In other words, we have to act impersonally in the situation, to do our best to solve the practical problems that appear in our life. Provided we do this, we act impersonally towards the resolution of these problems. If our effort seems to fail, serendipity will come in. Serendipity may come in two ways. One way is that we will realize the mistake we were making, which will enable us to take corrective action. In this way, we have grown in wisdom. Or serendipity may appear just as an act of God, something, an opportunity will present itself, for instance, that we have to catch, or some unforeseen event will take place. So there will be always a solution in that sense. And often it will be an unforeseen solution. We may start in one direction because we need a direction to, let's take an example. We need to make money, right? And so we don't have a job, and we need to explore. So we need to kind of establish a kind of a resume, at least for ourselves, and also think about what our interest is. And then we may get the first job that we have to take because we need the money. But if we have been really impersonal, and for instance we wanted a job that was more in line with our love for the truth, or would give us more opportunities to see our guru or whatever. And if we have done our best to find such a job and our efforts have failed, then it may be that out of the blue a new opportunity will present itself. Someone will come and say, "Oh, I hire you. You want to live in Temecula? I'm just starting an office there. You could be my representative there." Just a joke. Tom, while lying in bed this morning, I reflected on some experiences the past few days and realized I had moments of realization of not being the body, and that I could sense myself in everyone, and that even consciousness was everything. I actually tuned into a Jean Klein video where he said there was a time in India where he just had this realization that everything was consciousness. My question is, do things just happen from here, or do I do something? Number one, things happen from here, things have always happened from here, and things will always happen from here, meaning from consciousness. Or do I do something? Do whatever comes from this revelation that you are universal consciousness. Jacqueline, I'm coming slowly to your question, so be patient. Tom, by what means can humans live in harmony with the universe? By not believing to be separate entities, by getting rid of this belief through the investigation. Carol makes a suggestion for a t-shirt: don't call God, God will call you. Okay, Jacqueline. My question centers around awakening. You call it happiness, which I understand is the main objective. Yet there seems to be a process of integrating the realizations, of being able to live them out, or the freedom that came from the understanding, right? Right. This doesn't really get touched on, or not in the obvious terms. There was the experience of dying in the heart, of intense sensations that seemed like they might break me apart. I met them with awareness, allowed them to be without fear, and just observed. I sensed or could see a light all around me, and particularly in my skull and heart. As the sensations got more intense, and it felt like the body might explode. Everything then opened and dissolved into a beautiful, spacious feeling, and I fell to sleep. When I awoke, I saw consciousness is all, that it's all one thing, then there was no me, and honestly, I felt kind of stupid, as if the joke was on me. the one who had been searching for enlightenment, and here was the most obvious thing that had always been there right in front of me. This followed by spontaneous actions, words that were always a surprise, and an awareness of pure love in all. This seemed to be the classic awakening on a more complete level, but now I wonder what it was, or if it was, or just a glimpse could be that powerful in facing death if that's all it was. Or how just a glimpse could be that powerful in facing death if that's all it was. Because there has been a real cleaning out of belief systems and redefining the life so that it is more aligned with what's true since then. There has been the experience of almost every feeling and the seeing that the feeling realm, the body wisdom, that guides the life and shows what is liked or what's the natural movement, was rather cut off by a persona, so to speak, by a nice person or people pleaser. How does this happen that one could realize the absolute but then feel kind of lost or inexperienced in terms of living in a body successfully or from wholeness? Well, the awakening, the revelation that consciousness is all, is followed by an apprenticeship of how to live our life in accordance with the truth that has been revealed. Unless our actions, our thoughts, our feelings are in line with the truth that has been revealed, we won't enjoy the fruit of this revelation. In a sense, there is sadhana, there is, how do you call that? Spiritual work to be done even after the revelation. It's like you are given a beautiful musical instrument and then you need to learn how to play it. Let's say, as an example, as a metaphor, your body is like a violin. You inherited a Stradivarius violin, but you didn't have a bow to play it. And then the revelation is like the missing bow. Now you have the violin and you have the bow, how to play it. And then you pull the bow on the string and it sounds. And you say, wow, it sounds. But then that's not the end of the story. That's the beginning of the life of a musician. What is this journey of realizing God consciousness in all, but then living with a body-mind in a seeming world, and what still seems like a process of releasing everything past on the thought, feeling, and sensation level for living in the now completely? Yeah, the body-mind is the violin. Andrew, I currently feel as though the ego is dying. This is not a pleasant feeling, and it is causing turbulence. Yesterday, it was 8 days ago. Yesterday you talked about how happiness is a desired outcome. Is turbulence to be expected along the path, or am I on the wrong track? There can be turbulence. Dory. You repeat constantly that the ultimate byproduct of realization is happiness. In other words, when separation is dissolved, then happiness is unveiled. Zen Buddhism says that you cannot drive a nail in empty space, which means to suffer, to feel the nail, you must believe to be a solid entity. Does the happiness you talk about have an opposite? Is this happiness a continuous state? I have answered this question. Happiness has no real opposite. From the vantage point of ignorance, happiness has opposite, which is misery. But from the vantage point of knowledge, happiness has no opposite. In fact, from the vantage point of truth, misery is seen as a positive thing. Walter. I want to get back to yesterday's question about suffering. I also feel that suffering is unavoidable on our way to consciousness. Isn't it the same as you said to someone also yesterday, that as we are growing in consciousness, the suffering may become less in reality, but that we are getting more aware of it than we did before? Yes, the image I use for that is one who is living in a terrible relationship and her husband or his wife is cheating on him and, in fact, hates him or her. And so the relationship is terrible. Upon hearing from a friend that the spouse had been spotted with the lover in the lobby of some 5-star hotel, upon hearing this revelation, it seems that the suffering increased, that the relationship that he or she thought was strong was breaking apart. In fact, it was already broke. So the suffering apparently increased, whereas in fact, it was the beginning of the healing process. 1 year later, he or she is happy that this lousy relationship was revealed for what it was. So our ignorance is our relationship with this lousy partner called ignorance. The guru is a friend who tells you that you are being cheated upon. I spot your ignorance at the Ritz. Isn't it unavoidable to suffer the fear of losing our identity, the fear of dying as a person? Yes, like the fear of losing this relationship who is just making our life miserable. The shortcut to happiness is surely to be happy. But doesn't the fact that I'm still searching for happiness mean that I haven't found this shortcut yet? And of the 3 options, 1, to be on the right way, 2, to be lost without knowing it, 3, to be lost knowingly, the last option seems definitely the most frustrating to me. To be lost knowingly. No, you should congratulate yourself for knowing that you were on the wrong way. The wrong way is to be lost without knowing it, because as long as you are lost without knowing it, you remain lost. The moment you are lost knowingly, then you file for divorce. I feel that the more I let go of my beliefs of what I am and my beliefs of what is true, the more I don't know who I am and what life is all about. Sometimes that's good, because we don't. I have news for you. You, as a child, you believe that your parents know what life is about, or you believe that your teachers, they know everything, and they're quite dishonest with you, because they should tell you, I don't really know, not much for sure. So sometimes my investigation comes from a joyful desire to find out the mystery of life. But other times I'm so frustrated of not knowing, of not having any certainty in life, that my investigation gets more like, why do I have to live? What is the meaning of all this? Can such a frustrated investigation still be fruitful? Ask yourself when you ask this question, why do I have to live? What is the meaning of all this coming out of frustration? Who is it you are complaining to? So it's like my mom. She was a proclaimed atheist. And she was always complaining about her life. And who else than God could have she been possibly complaining to? Right? She was. So I was trying to mention to her, you are complaining, you claim on the one hand that God doesn't exist, on the other hand you are constantly complaining with God. Doesn't make any sense. Okay, any questions left here?